Although the Gotei 13 survives the Quincy Blood War, it doesn't come out unscathed, and is in fact irrevocably changed beyond belief. Nowhere is that more apparent than in its captains and vice-captains, the status quo of which has been shaken up dramatically in the aftermath of the battle. And that's what I like to see. It lends a real sense of change and progression to both the narrative and the world in which it inhabits. But just how capable is this newest set of vice captains? After all, there's quite a few relative unknowns among this latest batch of 13 or so Shinigami, and while I'm sure they're all capable enough, how many of them may in fact be captain level? Now, why captain level, you might be asking? After all, these guys are only supposed to be vice captains, right? Well, captain level as a term is an interesting and extremely broad classification, and by the time we get to the Hell Arc, frankly, it's become totally nebulous. Really, I suppose it simply means someone who is as strong or stronger than the weakest captain at any one time, of whatever their current iteration of the Gotei 13 looks like. Now again, the weakest captain is also pretty hard to determine, but the fact of the matter is the balance of power has shifted. Not just in the world of Bleach, but in the narrative. The Sternritter, the villains of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, were all given the blanket classification of being captain level, so to speak, and so that called into question just how useful the vice captain level fighters would really be. And I think moving forward, it's only natural that whatever comes next, if anything, continues that upward trend. So we need to figure out just how outmatched or not these guys might be before anything actually happens. There's also the fact that the Thousand Year Blood War arc totally transformed. It upended the strength dynamic of the Gotei 13. The cast of characters, the names, the faces, that wasn't all that was changed by the war. Now, we have some vice captains who are not only indisputably captain level, but they likely eclipse several of the current day captain lineup, making things more uncertain than ever. So in the end, maybe captain level simply refers to a vice captain whom we as readers would be content to see promoted. For example, certain vice captains were both made captains in the wake of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and it didn't, and frankly still doesn't, feel like it makes total sense. Likely because we, or at least I, never saw them as captain level prior to their promotion. So maybe that's really all it takes. Would we be happy, satisfied, to see these characters wearing a Hiyori one day, sooner or later? So, in today's video, we're going to do a roll call of the current vice captains to see which of them, in the wake of the biggest war the Soul Society has ever seen, can now be considered captain level, while determining what that really means. Before we get started on the video, there will of course be some spoilers for the Thousand Year Blood War arc ahead. I've already tried to dance around one particular fact a little bit, so just be aware of that before we get started. And of course, if you enjoyed today's video, consider hitting subscribe, consider hitting the like button, consider sharing the video with your friends as well, maybe even hitting that new hype button. If you think it's worthwhile, it really would make a huge difference, and I do greatly appreciate your support. If you really like what we do here on the channel, if you want to take the support an extra step further, consider checking out the Patreon down in the description as well. Your support there is really just going a very, very long way, and it does mean the absolute world. So, starting things off with the first division, we've got Nanao Issei, a vice captain who typically doesn't see a lot of battle, and whose expertise lies elsewhere. Nanao has spent the vast majority of her time, which was initially in the 8th Division, being sheltered by her captain Kyoraku, and as a result doesn't have much battle experience. As a member of the mystical Issei clan, Nanao doesn't wield a typical Zanpakuto either. Instead, she's able to utilize the ceremonial blade Shinken Hakyoken, which is essentially useless in a fight outside of very specific circumstances. So this leaves Nanao really only with her Kido prowess, which is admittedly unmatched among the vice captains. Not only is Nanao extremely skilled with Kido, but she's even capable of crafting her own bespoke spells. Spells strong enough to temporarily halt characters as powerful as Hashwolf. Now, I'm not sure we've even seen the limit of what Nanao can achieve with Kido, but even so, is she captain level? Well, as I said, it's going to be difficult to quantify, and ultimately, whether or not a vice captain is in fact captain level isn't as simple or as black and white as how powerful they are. It comes down to a number of things: their mentality, their leadership skills, their ability to rally and motivate those around them. And as we're going to see throughout this video, it isn't just a simple question of power. To be honest, maybe captain material is a better term to use than captain level. Anyway, in terms of her skill with Kido, yes, I imagine she's probably one of the most prolific Shinigami around, but is that enough? Considering just how lacking Nanao is in seemingly every other area of combat, right down to being flat out terrified of fighting, to having never even been wounded before, none of which is her fault, by the way. It's a product of the environment she grew up in. But I'd have to say probably not captain level overall, at least in regards to her combat ability. But her Kido skill is worthy of genuine commendation and will always be of crucial importance. Though, as we saw with the aforementioned spell that she conjured against Hashwolf, she needs to actually share said magic, said intel with her comrades too to get the most out of it. That being said though, when looking at the rest of this character, it seems to me like she has the intelligence. It seems to me like she has the wherewithal, the gumption, the leadership qualifications necessary to make it work. After all, she successfully talks down none other than Kenpachi Zaraki, and he's pretty agitated at the time too over the disappearance of Yachiru. So if push came to shove, and for whatever reason Nanao was forced to become a captain, was forced to don the Haori, I feel like I could see it, to be totally honest. I certainly think she's at least got the leadership skills and the mentality for the job. And then, of course, there's the other vice captain of the First Division, Genshiro Okikiba, who unfortunately we don't really know a thing about. Of course, generally speaking, the First Division under Yamamoto was made up of battle-hardened, exemplary Shinigami who were meant to lead by example for the rest of the Gotei 13, and considering just how powerful Yamamoto and Sasakibe were, it stands to reason the former third seat, Okikiba, would be pretty tough too. Yamamoto was content with leaving Okikiba to defend the 1st Division barracks during the Quincy invasion, which I guess says something maybe, although he also didn't really have many choices. But ultimately we don't have a reference for this guy whatsoever. Moving on to the 2nd Division, and look, despite all the growing that Omaida has done, despite watching him change into a proud warrior of the Gotei 13 come the Thousand Year Blood War arc, despite shedding his cowardly nature and actually standing up to enemies who are, frankly, considerably more powerful than him, I still don't think he's likely to be captain level. I don't think he's captain material. This is a guy who never trains, who rarely puts in the work, and who was made vice captain thanks to his father's connections and money. As we've recently discussed, Omaida's Gagetsuburi is a pretty sorry excuse for a Zanpakuto with very little versatility, and his only real serviceable skill is in Hoho. Yes, he's decently fast, but to this day that's kind of about all he has going for him. Sadly, even though his attitude appears to have improved somewhat, even as late as into the Thousand Year Blood War arc, post the first Quincy invasion, we see that Omaida would rather lounge about and pine for his captain than actually take the initiative and train himself, even with a huge war looming on the horizon. So, no, I don't think he's captain level, I don't think he's captain material, and I think even after his growth, which is a good start, people would be shocked to actually see him wearing that Haori. Next up, we have an interesting character, one that possibly toes the line of captain level more so than any of the Shinigami we've looked at so far, and that's the resurrected vice captain of the 3rd Division, Izuru Kira, who's adopted a suitably edgy and frankly awesome looking new hooded appearance as of the Hell Arc. Now, yes, Izuru is taken out of action for almost the entirety of the Thousand Year Blood War arc thanks to nearly being killed by Basby at the very start of the invasion, but let's not hold that against him, it was a bit of a cheap shot. Izuru is a very well-rounded Shinigami with skills in multiple disciplines. As a former member of the 4th Division, Izuru is a capable healer, while his Zanpakuto Wabisuke is both dangerous and extremely powerful. And as we see in even his most recent appearance in the Hell chapter, he's able to make the most of it in smart ways, slashing his own foot multiple times to increase its weight before slamming down upon one of the Hell Hollows to kill them immediately. But is Izuru really captain level? Does he really have what it takes? He's fairly smart, tactical, and much of the emotional instability he suffered as a result of Gein's betrayal has seemingly gone, though it's been replaced by an eternal veneer of dour stoicism and gloom. Even though he supposedly takes out the Leal Flamingos at the end of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, their power had been almost entirely stripped away. And I'm not sure his newly resurrected form actually improved his strength. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I know he takes on Shaz Domino in the beginning of the Revive of Tomorrow, but again, I'm not sure he necessarily had to have improved strength to do that. If anything, he outsmarts Shaz. I think for now, Izuru finds himself in a weird liminal spot, which actually makes a lot of sense considering his current state between life and death. He finds himself very much on the cusp of being captain level, of being captain material, but not quite capable of fully making the jump just yet. He needs more time to heal in more ways than one. The new vice captain of the 4th Division is Kiyone Kotetsu, replacing her older sister Isane, who became captain in the wake of the war. And again, unfortunately, we don't really know anything about Kiyone's capabilities, despite her being around since the Soul Society arc. She used to hold the position of the 3rd seat of the 13th Division alongside Sentaro Kotsubaki, but neither of them has ever been involved in a battle, somehow. Kiyone was instantly bested and nearly killed by Soifon in the Soul Society arc, and was instantly impaled by a Hell Hollow in the Hell chapter, having done nothing in between. I've got to be honest, Kubo's treatment of this character in the Hell chapter, while it's only brief, I don't think bodes well for what, if any, plans he may have for her in an upcoming arc. So yeah, not much to go on. Presumably she's a skilled enough healer to warrant the vice captain position in this new age, unless she's there purely as a result of Isane's nepotism, which could be possible. But to be honest, based on what little we know of this character, I'm going to go ahead and say she probably isn't captain level. But hey, I could be proven wrong in the future. I'm not sure people expected Isane to really be worthy of the captaincy either, although there wasn't a lot of choice, considering Unohana, well, died. It's kind of funny, like, I'm trying to think back to when those final chapters released. Was I expecting Isane to become the new captain? I kind of feel like I must have been. I need to go back and rewatch my reviews, because obviously Unohana's death meant that she was likely the only logical choice, but I definitely recall being flabbergasted that Iba was made captain of Squad 7. I think I was pretty much dead set certain that Love would come back before that ever happened. So, I don't know, maybe I was surprised by it, but it just goes to show that some of these vice captains, at least in our minds, they weren't really ready to take up the mantle of captain, so maybe that's true of Isane as well. Moving on, and up next we have the vice captain of the 5th Division, Hinamori Momo, who again has undergone quite a lot of growth over the years. She's really rather transformed, actually, especially since Aizen's manipulations and subsequent betrayal. Now, Hinamori feels as though she very much stands on her own 2 feet. A necessary step for her to really begin to carve out her own identity. I've never found, personally, Tobiyume to be the most impressive Zanpakuto in the world, but where Hinamori has always shined is in her Kido prowess, which is maybe second only to Nanao's among the vice captaincy. Though we don't really have enough information about that, Hinamori could be first for all we know. Where Nanao is concocting bespoke barriers to block Quincy's, Hinamori is mixing multiple Kido spells together to create incredible chain reactions. Hinamori has been through an awful lot, and so it's great to see her in a much better place, but is she captain level? Is she captain material? Going with my gut, I don't think so. Not yet. In the Thousand Year Blood War arc, although she's become stronger, more dependable, and much more level-headed, she's still rash and quick to act, throwing herself at Bambietta despite clearly having no chance against her. It kind of feels like the next step for Hinamori, in my opinion, isn't so much the captaincy, but a power-up. It feels like she needs a power-up to me, like she's due one. Now that she's found peace, a well-earned peace, she's at risk of stagnating and being left behind by the other Soul Society arc vice captains, many of whom are, it feels like, kind of moving on up. So I'd be up for seeing her experiencing some real positive growth too to get her closer to that threshold. That being said though, to be totally honest, I don't think people would be against her becoming a captain. Hell, it makes more sense than Iba. And again, like Izuru, she's quite versatile. I see it on the cards one day, but maybe not just quite yet. Right, well, we've come now to the easiest slam dunk entry on this list. Frankly, the vice captain of the 6th Division, Renji Abarai, was in some ways captain level, at least in regards to power, by the time he achieved Bankai back in the Soul Society arc. Sure, his Bankai wasn't refined. Sure, he wasn't anywhere near as strong as Byakuya, but simply unlocking Bankai put him leagues ahead of his contemporaries at such an early stage in the story. Renji is one of the characters who suffers the absolute most in the Rankar arc, and is made to look, honestly, absolutely terrible over and over again, and his Bankai is utterly robbed of all value. It looks weak, he looks weak, the cycle repeats itself ad nauseum throughout that arc. However, as of the Lost Agent arc, well, Kubo made a concerted effort to rehabilitate Renji's image, and again, to be honest, he was almost certainly captain level, maybe captain material at this point in the story too. But of course, after his training in the Royal Palace in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, Renji's power has been amplified to an absurd degree. This, along with acquiring his true Bankai, has catapulted him into probably the mid to high tier of captains already, which is completely insane. Again, if we're just talking sheer power, which we've already established isn't the only criteria here, but in terms of sheer power, Renji is now stronger than a bunch of the current Hell Chapter captains, let alone the vice captains. And there's no going back from that. So while power isn't the only factor at play, Renji is probably now so powerful that he does merit being a captain on that alone. But to be honest, Renji's almost certainly captain level in many other regards too. He defends his squad in the face of maybe certain death. He works and trains very diligently, and is willing to put his life on the line, to always try and do the right thing. There's no doubt about it. If this man wanted it, he'd be wearing a Haori by now. Atao Rindo is the new vice captain of the 7th Division, and when I say he's new, well, I really mean it, as he was only introduced in the Hell chapter, so we don't have a lot to go on. Though, funnily enough, we've seen more from him than we have from some of the other vice captains, which says a lot. His unnamed Zanpakuto seems I don't know, fairly impressive to me, at least from the one use case example we've had so far, featuring the ability to seemingly turn into any animal that a Tau signs into life. Or, well, into a flock of hawks anyway, but they all strip a huge hell hollow to the bone in a matter of seconds. But still, it's simply not enough to call Atao captain level just yet. The high likelihood is that he's still not strong enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with the captains, and that's okay, as they should be on a totally different level. That's really how this is supposed to work, certainly prior to the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Like I said, we've only come to expect certain vice captains to be of a captain class caliber thanks to the Thousand Year Blood War arc, thanks to the caliber of enemy in that arc, and the way certain characters became so monstrously strong, but faced with a new day, with a fresh start, reality sets in somewhat again. And the same is true, too, for the new vice captain of the 8th Division Yu Yu Yayahara, who was also introduced in the Hell chapter. Yu Yu showcases some pretty impressive feats again, like Atao, within a very short space of time, and her as of yet unnamed Shikai, which takes the form of her nails, allows her to eviscerate even gigantic hell hollows with ease, biting through them with the massive force of a bear. Again, though, it's not enough to go off. For starters, we don't even really know how strong or how durable the average Hell Hollow is. To be totally honest, they seem mostly comparable to normal hollows in that they at least go down in a single slash or two. But for now, it just makes sense to assume that Yu Yu is likely at least average vice captain level. Again, whatever that really means anymore. Basically, it seems to me like she can at least tussle with the average vice captain, but I would be surprised to see her promoted, but that's only because, again, I know nothing about her. Alright, but moving on, and, well, what do you know, the 9th Division, as it turns out, is kind of swimming in captain-level vice captains. Up first is, of course, Shuhei Hisagi, who, even as far back as the Arankar arc, quickly proved himself to be capable, resourceful, patient, and intelligent, along with wielding a deadly Zanpakuto in Kazushini that he had expert control over. But even more important than all of that was Hisagi's determination to stand up to his former captain Kaname Tosen and try to take him down, try to help him see the error of his ways and bring him back to the light. It was Hisagi's maturity in not only his attempts to reach out to Tosen, but also to do the impossible in the end, when he was certain his former captain was too far gone. Hisagi killing Tosen is a huge moment for the character's growth. There's no hatred there, no spite, no malice. He's doing his job. Not only because he has to, but because it's the right thing to do for Tosen himself in that moment. So yeah, to be totally honest, even as far back as the Arankar arc, I don't think anyone would have bat an eyelid if Hisagi was made even interim captain in the wake of the battle against Aizen. Now sure, Kubo hates Hisagi these days and he gets a horrible showing throughout the Thousand Year Blood War arc, but in my eyes it doesn't really change a thing. And then Can't For Your Own World rolls around and gives Hisagi one of the most broken Shikai ever, after revealing Kazushini's true ability, as well as its bankai Fushino Kojo too. So yeah, Hisagi is absolutely suited to the role of captain in pretty much every way. He is definitively captain material. He's absolutely got the power and skill for the job, even if Kubo tried to do everything in his power to shut him down against the Sternritter. Mashiro Kuna, the so-called super vice captain of the 9th Division, is an interesting one, and less clear-cut than Hisagi, though still impressive, I think. In terms of raw power, yes, she's almost certainly captain level. Her holification was already pitting her against captain opponents over 100 years ago, and her physical prowess is absolutely impeccable. But the real question is, does she really fit the bill in any other way? Mashiro is immature, naive, and frankly almost childlike in the way she acts. She rarely takes things seriously, overestimates her own ability, and gets in trouble as a result. Putting her in charge of an entire division feels like a bad idea to me. She honestly feels best suited to fighting alongside Kensei and helping out where she can, such as when she was directed to protect the Shino Academy, sadly off-screen. But yeah, in regards to raw power, her holification should absolutely give her an edge. It's just a question of whether that's really enough. But again, to be honest, with Eva making Captain, frankly, it kind of feels like any of these characters really can. Okay, but now we've reached possibly the most difficult character on this list for me to determine. And of course, that's the Vice Captain of the 10th Division, Rangiku Matsumoto, a Vice Captain we've spent a lot of time with throughout the story, and one who hasn't so much undergone any particular growth, as she's instead been a highly capable, highly loyal, and very impressive vice captain from the get-go, despite a somewhat disappointing Zanpakuto in Haineko, at least in my opinion, although Rangiku is very capable with it, and we've seen her utilising it in a huge variety of useful configurations over the years, from offense to defense and more. She feels like, especially with the likes of Renji and Hisagi definitively being captain level now, Rangiku instead kind of feels like the archetypal example of a truly stellar vice captain, a top tier, the absolute upper echelon of a vice captain, and one for newer vice captains to aspire towards. Is she captain level? Is she captain material? Honestly, I'm not sure. Her attitude isn't always the best. She's lazy, she's unfocused, and unwilling, it seems, to really learn and grow even her own strength, though admittedly, of course, it is more difficult for her to do after Aizen robbed her of some of her soul. Which is, pretty rough going, but at the same time, her own personality flaws do get in the way. But, on the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised, nor unhappy, to see her take up the mantle someday, to see her putting on the Haori. Frankly, it makes sense, but I'm just not sure it's really for her. Rangiku seems to suit being a second in command, to having someone to forge a partnership with, to be that loyal partner who's got your back. She seems uninterested in her own growth, but more than willing to go to bat for and to protect those she cares about, to get involved in the toughest of situations, and to put herself on the line. And that's my favourite thing about her. Rangiku means business. She likes to party, she likes to drink, but when push comes to shove, there are few vice captains you would rather have at your side. So, is she captain level? Is she captain material? I've kind of talked myself into it. Honestly, I'd say yes, maybe. But I can't help but wonder if she suits being the pinnacle of what it means to be a vice captain instead. Honestly, if nothing else, there's considerably less paperwork to deal with. And then next on the list is another character that we've spent a lot of time with over the course of the story, and another one who I think it is quite hard to determine. And that's the new vice captain of the 11th Division, Madarame Ikaku, who took over after Yachiru's disappearance. Now, Ikaku is another tricky one. Perhaps earlier in the series it felt like maybe he was captain level, especially after he revealed his bankai, which put him on a similar pedestal to Renji at the time. And Renji himself even looked up to Ikaku as a senior and respects him greatly. So, perhaps around the time of the Arankar arc, yes, Ikaku might have had the strength necessary to become a captain, certainly, again by virtue of having a bankai so early on. He, a third seat at the time, had surpassed many of the current vice captains. But Ikaku is very unique in that it kind of feels like where he started out looking maybe captain material even though he never wanted it, he's been on a downwards decline ever since. Until Kubo shows us some genuine, tangible growth for this character, it does feel like he is forever on the decline. The issues with Ikaku begin to crop up as time goes on. His attitude in the Arankar arc is all wrong, as he's willing to essentially throw a fight if it means he doesn't have to reveal his bankai in front of other people, at the same time jeopardizing the larger battle and even the fate of Karakura Town. A lesson he potentially learns, hopefully, at the receiving end of Iba's fist. Meanwhile, after his battle with Edrad left his bankai basically destroyed, his power has greatly decreased, and may never be capable of returning to what it once was. At least based on what we know of the lore, Ryumon Hozakimaru, although cobbled together again by Akon, is now a shadow of its former self. Meaning that even from a power perspective, despite having a bankai, it is hard to know where Ikaku truly stands anymore. So, when it comes to whether or not Ikaku is captain level, again, it's a difficult one. And I can't help but feel the opposite about him to how I feel about Rangiku. While again, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised or even unhappy to see him ever become a captain to don the Hayori, even though it's something he explicitly said he never wants. I'm not sure he's really got the right stuff for the job, whereas I think Rangiku does, but it's just a case of perhaps being a vice captain suits her better. The penultimate vice captain to look at on this list is one of my favourites, despite not really having seen anything tangible from him just yet. And that's the vice captain of the 12th Division, Akon. And yeah, despite Akon again having been around for a long time, he's sadly in a similar boat to the likes of Kione and Sentaro. But I have a sneaking suspicion that if there is ever a Hell Arc or anything like that, Kubo might give Akon some spotlight, certainly more than those two are ever likely to get. We know he is particularly intelligent enough to have been taken out of the maggot's nest at a young age by Mayuri himself, and to have then gone on to be, really, Mayuri's trusted number 2 in the lab, aside from Nemu, for many years. But in regards to his capabilities, unfortunately he's just a bit of a blank slate right now. In the Hell chapter, he easily defeats a Hell Hollow using not his Zanpakuto, not a Kido, but some kind of acid or something. It looks as though he carries a variety of vials and tools with him onto the battlefield, which is neat, but it doesn't give us a great understanding of his current power level. Akon was given quite a lot of development in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, though, that helps give us a better, more well-rounded picture of his personality, of how he might act were he made a captain. A surprising amount of development, really, for a character who had been mostly in the background prior to the final arc, and his actions in the first invasion in particular, when the situation was truly dire, his ability to take the initiative in the worst possible scenario and make real, snap, leadership decisions, to go behind the back of his own captain who is, let's face it, diabolical at the best of times, definitely makes it appear as though he might have the mentality for the job. But right now he is just too much of an unknown asset outside of that. So as much as I'd like to say, yeah, I think Akon is ready to become a captain, unfortunately it's just not the case. And finally, we have the vice captain of the 13th Division, Sentaro Kotsubaki, who again used to share the 3rd seat position here with Kione before they were split up in the aftermath of the war. Again, almost everything I said about Kione, I can say about Sentaro. They are practically one and the same. The only real difference is that, presumably, Kione has some healing skill, again, unless she really is only in the 4th Division now because of nepotism. Whereas Sentaro's place here in the 13th Division doesn't really tell us anything, as it's where he was originally, and he hasn't shown anything to warrant any speculation whatsoever. Like Kione, he is instantly wiped out by Soifon back in the Soul Society arc, and that's really about it. So no, I don't think he's captain level, captain material, likely in any shape or form, but again, I could be proven wrong. Alright everyone, but that's it for today's video. That's my breakdown, my roll call of the current iteration of the Gotei 13's vice captains as of the Hell chapter, to identify just who among this list we think might be ready to take up the mantle, to take up the Hayori, should push come to shove. Honestly, it's a surprisingly decent looking list despite all the unknown variables, and it kind of surprised me as we went through it. I think Nanao, could probably be captain material, again, if push really came to shove. Izuru, I'm not quite set on that one yet. Hinamori, I think, probably could be right for the job. Renji is a definite yes. Hisagi is a definite yes. Mashiro is again a maybe, though I'm not entirely sure. Rangiku is a probably yes, but again, I'm not sure it really suits her. Ikaku, I'm not certain about. So that's maybe about half or so of the current crop of vice captains who I think could be ready to take up the role of captain if it was ever needed of them in the worst case scenario. And again, considering the likes of Iba were already made captain in the wake of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, frankly, all of those characters that I just listed off are more qualified to take up the role than he was. So do with that what you will. Okay, guys, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you agree with my assessment on these Hell Arc Vice Captains? Do you agree with my picks for the ones who are captain material, or do you think maybe I'm off base here? Do you think someone like Izuru is definitely captain material? Maybe someone like Ikaku, someone like Rangiku, maybe someone else like Akon? I don't know. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below, so do please let me know. Alright everyone, once again, thank you so very much for watching. It really does mean a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you took something of value away from it as always as well. Consider hitting subscribe down below to help continue to grow the channel. It really would help a lot. Consider giving the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Check out the Patreon as well down below. Check out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games as well, and give us some support over there if you really like what you see. And of course, as always, speaking of Patreon, we've got to end by saying a huge thank you and giving a massive shout out to all of you who are supporting me over there. It really is making a massive difference. You've got no idea. And it really does mean the absolute world. The $2 a month tier is the most popular one, and that's the one that not only gets your name in the credits of every single video, but also gets you every single video absolutely free of YouTube ads. So consider checking out the Patreon if you want to support me over there. It really is greatly appreciated. Alright everyone, until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.